Some people are just always on. They're
Just
just built
always
that way.
on. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Get the Mic, the only show where your host on the left, Owl,
And your host on the right, Brock.
dissect fiction for its mythological significance. And in this episode, we're talking about Dragon Ball, of course. I hope the chat is back. I did put it back over Brock's head, so hopefully it works. But yeah, we're talking about Dragon Ball today. Episode 128, The Secret of the Woods. And it actually has another title in Japanese that I think we're going to get into as soon as we start. Any other housekeeping stuff, Brock?
Nope.
Great. If you like what you hear, go ahead and like and subscribe. The links above me should be accurate at this point if you want to follow us on any of those. And I think without further ado, we can get started. And there we go. So I'm going to leave it here. I think Brock has some things he wants to add about the title and maybe the title change. I'm not sure.
I just think that as quietly as the sky is more relevant to what we were talking about in the last episode, that is the secret of the woods, is that Goku needs to figure out how to be as quiet as the sky. And he didn't really understand that, which is why he did not pass the last training, the last test that he was a part of. But that'll basically bear out as we talk about this episode and get towards the end of it.
Yeah, I think so. And immediately we're going to see the aftermath of that lack of preparedness. So let's go ahead and not turn on the volume and continue. So, let me get that up. First, we see Mr. Popo is standing over Goku after he's been knocked unconscious for 3 days following the incident with the lightning on Mount Thunder. Initially, Goku is really ready to continue his training, but Popo tells him it's too dangerous to continue. The training was too advanced for him, and that they need to start kind of smaller. And so basically, this first scene, Popo takes him to the time room again, and tells him some things that are pretty important. One of them being that the being as goodness, I wrote it down here. To be quicker than lightning, he must first feel as the sky. And then Popo emphasizes that as saying this is a very important point. And basically, he tells Goku he's about to send him deep into the forest to find this new wisdom. So, let me go ahead and kind of like this part right here. We'll just leave it there for a sec. But here, I think there's several things to say. Firstly, that Goku's unconsciousness to this is one of the first times we've seen this happen. I mean, how long was he out after Tambourine? Do we even know? Do they even say?
I don't remember if they do.
But it's one of the only times we see an encounter that leaves him this mired in chaos, right?
Right.
And so his unconsciousness for 3 days a year is pretty stark. And it's also to say that the enlightenment or the light that he's imbibing through this process is too much for him at present. And so Popo wisely basically tells him, this is too advanced. You're going to basically overshock your system like Sleeping Beauty. And so they got to start at a smaller rate.
Yeah, and in this instance, he slept for 3 full days following what happened, right? To emphasize the fact that it's kind of like that Sleeping Beauty thing.
Right, yeah. But he's now awake to it again, and he's kind of ready to go, but that also is kind of, again, showing his naivety, thinking that he can just do it if he just goes over and over. But Popo gives him a new path. He's got to build towards it, and that is true in a psychological sense as well. Like building on one psyche is the only way. You can't arrive at one destination without the building blocks there. And so Popo basically gives him a new avenue to build that first step into being quicker than lightning. And what's the first step to being quicker than lightning? But to feel as the sky. And what does that mean? Oh, whoa, it worked.
It works. That means to be empty. It's a continuation of the emptiness necessary to be able to operate on this level.
Right, but it involves something else too, because the sky is very aligned with the logos, the masculine, right? The eagle, all that. And so what I'm getting from Popo's insistence on it being very important to feel as the sky. It's being open, like you were saying, and being empty, but it's also being conscious to the invisible flows around you, because the sky, right? I mean, wind blows all about, but it's unseen. And so feeling as the sky is feeling those unseen things around you. And that's what Goku's trying to achieve, trying to feel out this the lightning, the enlightenment that he's seeking.
Yeah, let's say that the emptiness of the sky is what allows light to flow down upon the waters.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And so anything let me see. Oh yeah, Goku also initially thinks that Popo sending him there because there's someone strong to fight, which Popo here says he can say no more. Which is interesting because he lets Goku believe that that's the case, and that's going to come back later. But this idea is like quintessential Popo, right? He is the emptiness, right? He is that almost not void, but and I don't want to say reflection, but it is something like that, to where whatever you're putting in, Popo's going to give back, right?
Right. It's almost as if he's the vehicle by which Kami can instill wisdom. And because Goku is saying to Mr. Popo, is the wisdom that I'm supposed to be receiving a fight? And of course, if that's the way that Goku can receive that wisdom, then sure. But of course, Popo knows that's not how he will receive it. And that's part of what the wisdom is.
Right. It's to say too that not all wisdom is gained through conflict, especially like this. And Kami, so far as we've seen, has been a pretty peaceful character, and luckily I think he is basically preserved from all of that and new Dragon Ball because of his fusing with Piccolo, which is a really good thing for my appreciation of the character. But yeah, I think it's Popo is it reminds me of the cave in Empire Strikes Back, where Yoda basically tells Luke, like, hey, whatever you take in with you, Luke basically asks him what he's going to find in the cave, and Yoda says, only what you take with you. And he takes weapons, he takes his lightsaber, and he finds himself corrupted as Darth Vader, right? And that's not to the extreme of this, but really Popo's allowing Goku to read into this as he will. And it could have veered him off the path pretty hard, but we're going to see what happens. Anything else we want to say here?
I don't think so. The setup is the same as it was last time. He uses the machine, the surroundings change, and then he does one last thing, and then Goku's dropped into this area.
Yes. And as soon as he's dropped in, he falls into a swamp, and Popo leaves, right? Popo disappears, I want to say. Also, Goku complains that Popo dropped him in the swamp, which is somewhat reasonable, but also that's only from like an interpersonal thing. Obviously, you're gonna get dropped in the swamp when and that's kind of the point. Like, this is supposed to be Goku going into the forest in the part that he least understands, and so the swamp first is going to be the thing he encounters because it's going to leave its mark and make him like perform almost a ritualistic cleansing here.
Yeah, it's interesting because we know Goku can swim. One of the first things that we really see is Goku's mastery and his ability to go catch fish and all that. But he's dropped into this swamp and he just sinks to the bottom. And then it's it's symbolic of, well, what we're going to see towards the middle and end of this episode. But he has to be dropped into a water that he can't navigate, and then overcome that. Which in this instance, of course, is through using his key, using the Kamehameha.
Yeah, and that makes sense because the whole purpose of the symbology of the swamp is it being it's you oh man, opaque, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You can't see through it. It's very murky under there, right? It's not like clear water. It also is a bottomless swamp. And it's to show the depth of the mystery that Goku has yet to unveil about life and how that is something that has some bottomless unknowns to it, let's say. And so that's the first thing, and that's the first instantiation that we see Goku encounter. And of course, Goku using the Kamehameha wave is separating out the truth there using his speech. Now, I will say too, one thing I wanted to mention, some of the filler episodes have some quirks about them. I don't think we've gotten to any yet, but I'll mention those as we get to them, as they come up, because some of them are a little strange, especially in the next.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially in the next episode. But anyways, let's continue. Unless you have anything else to say here.
Well, I just like that you called it a ritualistic thing that Goku had to do to get out of the swamp, because it ruins his clothes essentially, and it makes him have to take them off and then be naked, right? Which is a good
right. He has
segue
to
into the next
expose
part.
himself to the unknown, right? And that is part of the effects of the swamp, being dropped in the swamp, and it's something that Popo like does for him more or less. I know he complains about it, but that's kind of the way that it's meant to be done, let's say. And so Goku gets hungry. Wow, what do you know? And there
This
he
setup
goes.
of him too, being in this this reset, it's very similar to when he gets the Nimbus destroyed for him and he falls down and then he's wandering and he's hungry. We kind of have this rehashed here.
True.
He's
and
going naked through the forest, searching
la-
for food again.
Last time he chilled with monkeys, right?
I
Or am I thinking
believe
of a
so.
different time? Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see the differences here because, as we can see, Goku travels from the swamp and from the river where he cleans himself, and he nearly gets trapped. Of course, he's too strong to get trapped by like a regular animal trap, and the huntsman comes along and finds Goku naked standing on a tree. Now, here, Goku's going to go back with him to the cabin, and there he's going to meet his family. But let's pause there for a sec. So, I wanted to say, yeah, he was chilling with monkeys before, but now he's going to interact with people in this one. And I guess he does do that some, like in Inishikacho, right? I guess he does that a little bit there too. But I don't think he goes like naked in the woods or anything like that. It's not as mired in the unknown. It's really presenting Tien that one, I suppose.
I think it's I think it is significant, though. It's almost as if there is a grounding that's happening here where Goku has to be as an animal and then ascend up into society. where he's captured naked this time, and of course he's not an animal, and he breaks out of it, and it reminds me of when he goes to steal the food from Yajirobe, right? He just sees the food, he's in an animalistic state, and he just goes for it. Which is what Yajirobe sort of represents about him whenever he's in that state where he's been set low like that. And so
Yeah, it's kind of
the
great
food
that
element of this episode is tied all throughout it as well.
yes, and the food being not just sustenance in that way, but this is something that Goku is seeking because it's also that spiritual knowledge that he's been searching for, right? That's what some of the food in this episode will come to represent. But something I was going to say about that is in reference to Yajirobe, it's really nice how at that point it's more of the universe that's creating this this mirror for Goku, and then here in this little mini arc you have Popo being that emptiness that reflects back on what Goku's doing. Like what I mean by that is like the pole exercise, for example. Goku moving out of the way because he thinks that the malice of Popo extends beyond further than it does. Or let's not say malice, but the instantiation of Popo's spirit reaches further than he expects. Something like that. But yeah, him being naked in the forest, walking to get food, very reminiscent of a couple of past arcs, but mostly, yeah, Yajirobe. Let's see. Did you want to say anything about the Hunter? Because I have a couple things to say.
Well, I do. But I think that's kind of part of the next like big thing that happens, which is that he takes him into his house and introduces him to his wife and his children, and he gets their names, which are Moose and Eclair, and all the children are also named after foods.
Yes.
All sweets, actually decadent foods. It's all sweet cookie and biscuit
Puff,
and all these. It's all things that are, you would say, someone who is immature would be tempted by, that would want to eat. Not necessarily something that has to do with like sustenance, but more of desire. And I think a part of what is happening for Goku spiritually here is that he's learning through this episode essentially how to temper himself. And so we see this ascension, like I was saying. Now he steps up from being just hungry and needing the food to then seeing the situation where now inside of this house with society, there's a space where the food can actually be something that's sweet, and it's not just something about survival, but this is beyond survival, right? This is proliferation. This is life, right?
This is legacy, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that too has to do with it. I was gonna say one quick thing, but we can kind of tie back to it. So the Hunter capturing Goku, or trying to capture Goku, it's such a strange trap. What has to happen is, first of all, it's like this it's a piece of steak. Like it's not even like bait or anything like that. It's like a piece of steak. There it is.
On a plate in the middle of the path, as if it was
on a plate
made to capture a person.
Right, exactly. And I don't even know by what mechanism it is. I guess it's when he picks it up. But so he picks it up, and like these two, I guess, like concrete slabs come up and grab
this is one of those quirks.
Grab his hands specifically. Like if this is a deer that like bites on this thing, like it's gonna capture its and like crushes its skull. Yeah, I don't. It's so strange. But But what I did want to say, yeah, he has to like punch it. It's definitely like concrete or something. I have no idea who designed that. But the idea of this trap being in the forest is not something we've actually seen too much of before. We did see, I think, one of the monkeys like getting captured or something. I don't remember. Maybe the Red Ribbon Army is like bullying them or something. But this is where we do get a glimpse of, and I kind of like the filler arcs because we do get glimpses of this almost untamed Goku, where he's in the forest and interacting with things on a very symbolic level outside of the main storyline. And so here we're seeing the forest, which we've seen as pristine and peaceful, thus far being presented here as being interactive with mankind and interactive with society. And it's kind of one of the first times we're going to see that. And it goes into the changes that happen to Goku's character after this mini arc. But then we can go on to the sweet kids. Did you have anything else to add there?
No, I think one thing that just comes to mind automatically is thinking about how hunters keep sort of showing up, hunters, farmers, these normal people keep showing up at these moments in the show, even like moving forward all the way to like Z, where Raditz has this interaction with the farmer when he first arrives. There's always this sort of like interstitial um person who works the land, right?
Mm-hmm.
That the Saiyans or that the Z fighters or that different characters interact with that then lead into something, right? So, for instance, like the idea of Raditz killing the farmer, whereas like Goku is going to learn a lesson through this farmer, and there's always just, and he looks almost like the farmer at the beginning of Z, right? He's got the
Yeah, that's
overalls,
true.
got
Yeah.
the it's almost like there's this kind of idea that's trying to be expressed of what the normal state of things is being personified in this, right?
Right. And it goes to show somewhat the wisdom of Goku to appreciate and be a good guest to this family. But let's continue to the family itself. So you said Eclair is the wife's name, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Eclair. And then all the rabble. There's a million of them. And Donut, they're all named after what's Jelly and Biscuit. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, he says here, I've been catching rabbits and boar like that. How? In what
How?
way is putting a plate with meat catching rabbits?
In what way? In what way? Okay. Sometimes the filler episodes are pretty funny. But yeah, so Goku's happy about this. He's a good guest. And that's kind of or he's trying to be a good guest. Like he doesn't demand food. He is polite. He's like good to meet everyone. His stomach betrays him, and that's fine. It's not something he can control. Hey, what's up, Baze?
What's up, A's?
And there he is. Look, wow, the chat works. Amazing. And then here's the real interesting part. So the father is the one that goes out to catch meat. And what do you say, rabbits and what else?
Boar.
Okay, how do you catch a boar with that? Anyways, the
But there's your line. I couldn't catch us any meat, but
yes. Oh gosh, I just missed it, didn't I? Yeah, there it is. But Grandpa should be back with any minute with lots of fish. And what happens is basically they are waiting around for the grandfather to return with fish. And we're going to learn more about the grandfather. He kind of becomes the main representative of this family. He comes in and I think it's frozen. Hold up. A little too far. There we go. And so he comes in and all the kids are happy to see him. And that's one thing, one symbolic thing that we can see, as well as him bringing home lots of fish. So the father didn't bring back anything. The grandfather brought back all these fish. And he also sees that Goku's here. And, oh, yeah, all the kids like him, etc., etc. And it's not just that, like, they like him because he's feeding them. It's that familial wisdom that he represents in the family they're appreciating, and that's why they're all like kind of tugging at him and all that. And he asks Goku if he's the guest, and Goku bows, and that's another thing that I'm getting at, that the point that Goku is being a good guest here. And
yeah, I think
then
that
they sit down to supper. But go ahead.
I think that it's necessary that it's the grandfather and that he's bringing. You had mentioned that he kind of represents that familial wisdom. We've talked about this multiple times in Dragon Ball, where fish sort of represent that wisdom that comes from that can be brought up from the unconscious, brought from the unknown, and for instance, I think at the very beginning of Dragon Ball, Goku using his tail to catch fish,
That
and the tail
giant
being representative of his
fish.
connection extending back, right?
Yeah.
And so there's this is another instantiation of that, but it's what the episode is trying to convey. I think is it kind of wills itself out throughout the rest of the episode, but it's the grandfather, right? It's that patriarchal spirit that's bringing the wisdom that enables this cabin that's in the forest to exist and to have this space I was talking about. That's sort of that step above being an animal.
And I would say, unlike the last episode too, it really is tying it back to what this whole story is about at the moment. So we have to remember, and this is something we'll talk about more next episode, but Piccolo being a product of King Piccolo being a product of the failure of both Roshi and Mutaito. This bringing it back to the familial wisdom of the grandfather and the ancestors of the past is going to be important to proceed into what is going to be the last arc of the series.
Right. I guess that's a good way to put it, because it's what Goku's trying to do in this arc. What the training represents is sort of reconciling the discordance that exists. That is the responsibility of the patriarch, of the grandfather, let's say, right?
Right. Definitely. And so let's continue to see what is that role? What is it not playing? Or is it playing? There we go. So they have a feast of all the fish, and I guess there's a bunch of vegetables and bread and stuff. And of course, everyone is astounded about how much Goku eats. And while he's eating, he shares why he's in the forests. The kids assume he must be searching for a strong person based on his story, and so they tell him about Yao Chun, which is a famous strong man in the woods. There is something about the dub that is so strange, because they change it to, instead of Goku talking about Kami here, the promise he made to Kami, he says Popo. And then from Popo, they start talking about squirrels, and it literally has nothing to do with the translation or the story or anything. Basically, somehow they get to Yao Chun from that. But basically, in the sub, they say just normal kid stuff, like who's Kami? Is he better than daddy? Is he better than mommy? Like, I heard mommy's better than anyone, etc. So just like very basic kid stuff, right? And then what does he look like? They make faces about what Kami might look like, and Goku makes a face that looks nothing like him.
Well, it's interesting. Right, I actually think that it's kind of significant, because so when Goku first shows up, the older boy says to Goku, "That's some face you got there," in the translation.
Mm-hmm.
And then we kind of fast forward to this part, and then they're talking about well, what's the face of Kami? And then Goku imitates essentially Piccolo, right? Trying to be
Yeah.
scary because he's like, when I saw the face of Kami, I saw Piccolo and it scared me. So he's kind of trying to imitate that.
Right.
And so there's this interesting thing about face, like he's imparting something interesting to them that's completely lost, and it's such a quick moment. It's very funny. Like if you know what he's talking about, it's a really funny moment. That's why Dragon Ball to me is like one of the funniest shows I've ever seen because it's such a funny cutaway of him trying to express such a complex idea in a way that he absolutely can't.
In a very Goku way. Like, here it is. Here's my expression of it, and they have no context for any of it. But yeah, I mean, basically they do that, and then how did they get on the subject of here? So anyways, well, Goku just changes the subject. He says, so anyway, I hear there's this really strong guy around here somewhere, which was never, I don't know where.
No one said
no
that.
one said that. No one has ever said this.
I hear there's this really strong guy around here somewhere.
I forgot that was how that shifts.
It's very deliberate that they're showing that it's Goku's assertion that he just has to fight someone to learn this.
And much like the decadent sweetness of the candies that these are named after. Yeah, I mean, they're going to answer and give Goku what he wants, even though it's going to be like very unhealthy, as we're going to find out. And so they all say, go see Yao Chun, which I don't know what that translates to.
It's not going to be spiritually fulfilling, let's say.
Yeah, it's going to be
Goku to go and pursue
junk
this fight.
food, let's say, yeah. And so the kids, they build him up, and Goku's like, that's him. That's the guy I've heard about from no one. And basically, they say the same things that all of these say, like, don't fight him, you'll die, etc. And the grandfather actually, I think at this point, agrees to take him, or they play a bunch. Yeah, he'll take him, but then they go to sleep. And there's a lot of scenes that just, I mean, there's nothing to say about this girl going to sleep next to Goku. I don't even remember her name. He's a good guess.
It's funny, she says, you'll die if you fight him, and Goku goes, it's part of my training, which is funny because that is part of Goku's training.
It is, yeah. All right, let's pause here. I think Baze put a chat if you want to go ahead and read that, Brock.
Yeah, Baze says, I was reading Chesterton and I came across, quote, we read the Iliad because life is a battle, and we read the Odyssey because life is a journey. And I thought it summed up Dragon Ball as well. I think that's a really good point. There is this thing about orientation rather than a destination that Dragon Ball really represents, and part of what the story in this episode also represents. And the concept of Goku wants a means to an end. He wants to get the reward for showing up here and just get stronger, rather than to figure out where his orientation isn't correct. And that's the journey that he's on, right? He needs to respect the concept of his journey and be oriented properly.
Well, this is actually very meta too, because it's like Dragon Ball fans need to also understand that martial arts is just the vehicle of getting there, right? Martial arts is the Iliad battle part of it, and that the whole journey is more than just that. And yeah, it's about aiming to be not just stronger in physical strength, but spiritually, right?
Exactly, yeah, the aim up. Precisely. And I knew that we were going to talk about that eventually with this next scene that we're about to get to. It's very representative of what generally the Dragon Ball fandom and the discourse is.
Yeah. Well, let's get to it. So here we go back to Kame House, and around the island, the boys are swimming so that they can train. And they're all just saying the same old, like, you're not going to beat me. Well, you're not going to beat me. And there's actually a really good symbolic visual here, because we see Hiroshi here resting under the umbrella. And then we see no Roshi. And it's just nothing but Kame House. And it's why Roshi-sama, right? And so we already kind of know what's going to happen from that visual cue. And so basically, Roshi declines to train the boys further, saying that he's taught them all he can, and all he could teach them now is how to get pretty girls. And Krillin later asks him if he can teach him how to get pretty girls, and Roshi's like, no, it comes naturally. So actually, he can't teach that either. So Roshi's
This
hilarious.
is representative of exactly what we were saying, though, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a matter of orientation. So it's a matter of the journey. It's not a matter of them getting the thing from him anymore.
Yeah, they now have a vehicle. Like they've been given a Nimbus, let's say, from Roshi, metaphorically, and now they're able to actually travel throughout the world unimpeded by some of the things that would have weighed them down, like Shen's philosophy, right? Or Tao, or things like that. And so he's kind of freed them in that way. And now it's time for them to go and train on their own and kind of holistically incorporate the things of the universe into their own, instead of just focusing on being better fighters, which is always the
Right.
thing that Roshi has emphasized since the Red Ribbon Army arc. Goku asks him to go train with him, and he's like, no, there's nothing I can teach you. You need to go about without the Nimbus, and you need to interact with the world, and you need to be open to the chaos of the world. And it's always been something that's Roshi has emphasized.
Is it in this episode or the next episode when they realize what their next step is? I think it might be in the next episode.
It's got to be in the next episode.
I don't think there's a resolution to this in this episode, but I think in the next episode, it'll become apparent to them what that orientation, how they need to orient themselves in order to keep on growing. What that looks like in a very short scene.
Yeah, it's got to be, definitely. I know what you're talking about, but yeah, that I think this is the only scene with them in this episode.
But yeah, but Baze said it. They figure out what they have to do.
And this is something that's important. I paused here. Roshi lowers his glasses to look at them and tell them, at this rate, you will never be Goku's equal. And that is criticism of their inability to aim higher than what they can conceive. This is actually the opposite of the adage that their reach exceeds their grasp. Actually, no, I guess it is still.
No, I think it's exactly that.
It is still
right,
exactly that. Their
because
reach,
he's telling them that he can't extend their reach anymore
Yes.
because their grasp is now
their grasp is such a low point that that needs to catch up, right?
Yeah, like he's physically trained them as much as he can.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty much it for that. Oh my gosh, the dub is so weird. It goes into this part where he's like, I called this nurse named Rebecca. And it's just so weird. And then Tien interrupts him. He's like, that's great, master. But in the sub, it's just like normal. It's just so
Yeah, in the sub,
strange.
they try to eavesdrop on him telling Krillin his quote unquote secret of catching girls. We never hear it. And they're embarrassed that they're trying to overhear it, and then they walk away.
Yeah, that's this part right here.
Yeah.
The most important thing is, and then he looks over and he sees them. But no, I was talking about earlier whenever it was in the scene earlier where they cut away from him and it's just him like continuing to talk in the dub. It's really strange. Anyways, we can move on.
There's a lot of that, just talking when there's silence and just dubbing over when people are transitioning between one scene and the next.
Yeah, it's kind of annoying sometimes. But I think it really happens more in the filler. I've noticed that it happens a lot more in the filler than it does in the action. There's quiet moments of Dragon Ball, which I really like. Anyways,
Especially the recaps too. The recaps in the Japanese are just it just shows what happened, and then there's a little blurb at the end, and then we cut into the episode. But the English is we have to say everything that's happening on screen.
yeah, and it just describes what's happening. Like you can't see it. So we do see the family waving Goku goodbye here as he goes off with the grandfather. And so it's kind of, it's kind of fate that he comes with the grandfather after all. The grandfather goes towards that strong guy he's looking to fight, right? And it just happens that that's the same path that the grandfather is going down to go get the fish. Then the other thing I wanted to say here is in the dub, I actually don't know if they do this in the sub, but in the dub, he says that basically because he catches so many fish and he's been catching fish for 60 years straight every day, that he has enough food to basically feed the whole forest. And without him, the forest would starve. It's almost like the Pride Lands going all like desolate once Mufasa dies, right? It's the spiritual enrichment of the land that's imparted by the benevolent king.
Right. And it's funny too in this scene because then Goku says to him something along the lines of, "I hope you catch even more fish." And he just says, essentially, that's not necessary. Or he says the same amount will be plenty, or something like that. Which is kind of what we're saying, right? That he is performing this duty, and by becoming a part of the land, like becoming a part of the ecosystem here, that he's fulfilling his role, and he doesn't need to bring back more because he always brings enough. Like that is his role, is to bring enough. And there's not a need for excess because it sustains.
Well, especially not from the ancestral father, right? That doesn't come from the ancestral father. That ambition and the creation of chaos and order, like that pioneer spirit, it's really, it lends to be much more in the Logos arena than the ancestral father arena, let's say.
Yeah.
And so it's not really his job to do that either. And it's also why Goku's the one that recommends it, right? So what we see then is Goku goes off on this, let's say, ambitious path to fight Yao Chun. And he finds him easily. He's just right here. Here he is. And he sees Goku. We're going to speed this up a bit. We're going to speed this up a bit. And Goku's like, let's fight. And so they fight. And Goku easily wins because he's a lot stronger than this guy's just a mountain man. I mean, not saying that mountain men are weak or anything. Like, Yajirobe was basically that. But even Yajirobe had some other qualities besides Yao Chun. And basically then Yao Chun gets defeated and he pleads for his life. And he basically turns Goku down. He's like, well, I'm not that strong, so I don't know what you're going to do. And Goku starts to have kind of a existential crisis here. Like, what is he actually supposed to do here? I wonder if there really is.
Yeah, I like how he says to Yao Chun, he says, like, aren't you able to dodge lightning? And he's like, are you crazy? I'm not Kami.
Yes, that is a line I liked as well. Yeah, and that's the thing, like saying that only God can do that, right? Only one that is operating at that spiritual level can even fathom that process, not let alone do it. And so, yeah, I mean, it's completely. I think in the dub he says like, I only say that to say I'm strong or something, but yeah, it's basically the same idea. But yeah. Goku then wonders, like, I wonder if anyone is that strong. What does he say right before that? Hold on. Oh, that's it. He's just thinking about, like, why he's here. And then, what do you know? Here arrives the grandfather from, I guess, the family. And he teaches Goku how to fish and how to be quiet as the sky and focus so to sense the fish without movement. Goku eventually gets some fish towards the end, and we'll see some other things with that. But let's go ahead and let this play out a little bit. And basically, yeah, the grandfather doesn't like tell Goku what to do. He basically says, "Do you want to give this a try?" And Goku says that he's always caught fish with his hands, which is not true. He's caught fish with his tail, but that's beside the point. He's using some apparatus here, and there's a point to using this. The grandfather says to relax, and he basically gets Goku to sit down, to look at the sky. Oh gosh, that was really bad. And he looks over. Goku looks over at one point, and this is a trippy part because he looks over and the grandfather is not there. And then he's back, and he gets Goku to meditate. And when he does,
And he also was
explains some
there the whole
things.
time, right? Because Goku turns to him and he's like, "When did you get here?" And he says, "I've been here since morning."
Yeah, but Goku walks up and it shows that he's not there. In fact, the camera pans.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing we see is the camera pan in that direction. Hold on, we gotta go back to it now. Goes from that direction where we would see him, right? Right there.
Right.
He would be sitting right there if he was there the whole time. But then Goku does this. He falls half asleep, and there he is, and he says he's been there the whole time. And he looks over and he disappears. There's always been like a thing there, for me at least, that it's it instantiates not just him, but almost the whole family as almost a spiritual entity. It's not even that they really exist, right? It's that they represent what they do in this forest. And even like Yao Chun, it's like almost a pocket universe, like a little contained place that Goku can explore in the confines. And that's kind of what Kami's doing, right? And that is what Kami can do, is allow things to be separated and categorized into manageable parts.
Well, I do have a specific thought about that element of this character, of the grandfather character, right? Which is that what we've kind of said that he represents is that grandfather, that spirit of the logos, in a sense, that's enacting and bringing the wisdom to society so that it can be sustainable. And I think it's to say that when not directly observed, people don't think about it. They take it for granted. It seems to disappear, but the effects of it always come back. And he's been doing the same thing for 60 years. He's become a part of the environment itself. So it's kind of trying to not instantiate, but trying to impress upon Goku that he needs to appreciate it. Otherwise, it kind of vanishes. And it is taken as something that's just part of the scenery, part of the world, right?
That is a good way to think about it, to carry on the wisdom of the ages forward, because otherwise it'll disappear into oblivion.
And then that also ties into the fishing element of it, because Goku's always said, "Well, I've always caught the fish with my hands." And he says, "Well, there's a mechanism by which this is done, and you need to think of that mechanism as an extension of yourself, which is the fishing pole."
It's also one of the oldest, not just professions, but let's say rite of passage for young men. Let's say the passing of the knowledge of fishing from father to son, right? That happens in like every culture everywhere.
Right. I mean, think of it in a biblical sense, right? That creating fishers of men, right? The fishing process, what it's represented symbolically, even there, where Goku has to be able to understand that the effects of him doing it. Like, he can't just go and physically go catch fish over and over and over. He has to have to think of the process of doing it as an extension of himself, and the only way that he can do that properly is to imitate this spiritual father. And the only way that he can do that is by what he's learning right here, right? To become empty and let that flow through him.
Right, and the flowing part is a big deal of it. I like that he's telling him to like listen to the sound of the water and feel the water through the fishing pole. And I think that extension itself is a big thing. Like, of course, you can feel what is personal to you, but having something that can allow you to feel around you, outside of you, right? And that's kind of what Kami needs Goku to understand because of what Piccolo represents and how that is a spirit that is outside of just the interpersonal.
But I guess to summarize it, the lesson that Goku is glimpsing for just a second is that true sustenance, spiritual sustenance, is gathered and brought into society and sustains society and makes it so that things can operate the way that they do by opening oneself up to allow that order to flow through you and to become a part of that order. And that Goku, because he's become more of a spiritual figure, because he's up now training with Kami, he needs to understand the way by which he moves properly as that spirit. Otherwise, he becomes inverted in that polarity, right? That's kind of, for instance, whenever they were talking about that some face you've got there, and he's got a scary face, and they're like, "What's the face of Kami?" And it's a scary. He makes a scary face. I think that's kind of representative of this thing that in order for Goku to receive the proper training, he needs to be able to allow Kami to flow through him empty, because if he impresses himself, then he becomes essentially a bad guy, like what he did running up and trying to fight this guy and just laying him out with one punch and then just running off, running up and trying to grab food that he finds out as an animal, right? He needs to find that spirit by which things have order and not just be a part of it. And so we also see that as he starts to catch fish, he goes from being the person who goes and tries to get the fish for himself, like a child, like the children are all named after sweets, and that's kind of representative of that desire for the satiation. But then he ascends to being the person who provides the sustenance instead, right?
Right, and it's interesting that it is cyclical in this way. Kami is actually teaching Goku, like, there is an overarching spiritual wisdom he's going to gain, but to begin, it's like you gotta start at the basics, right? We gotta not worry about being the representation of the logos. It has to be coming down from the clouds, like to make Goku down to earth, let's say.
Right, and it grounds it in the sense that, like, the man who just feeds his family and his community is acting out the spirit of Kami by allowing himself to be a part of it, right?
Yes, and that's
And so this is how you
man,
do that.
it's actually great because the guy saying like, "Oh, quicker than lightning, I'm not Kami," and then this guy is like further on his way to being Kami like than Yao Chun, even though he's way strong. And I think that's a
And it's not just by being a hermit, right? Because Yao Chun is this hermetic.
Yeah.
This is what Goku thinks that a really
Yes.
strong guy looks like, right? He's just by himself. He's not part of a community. He's not passing things down. He's not passing a spiritual wisdom down. He's resigned himself away. And so, that's the thing that Goku needs to learn to ascend, essentially, is how to integrate as a spirit instead of
so
just
brilliant.
being
It's so
separate.
brilliant. It's really, Kami is not a boomer, everyone. Listen up. Kami's not a boomer. Kami worries about the future. He wants the future to be better than his present status quo. And he's kind of sowing his own seeds of disappointment here, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. But yeah, exactly. It grounds it and makes it to where Goku can see the wisdom in these everyday and it's kind of mundane, but it's also necessary for the order of the world to continue. And it's supported by the spirit of the grandfather here, providing sustenance to not just his family, but the land, and how that's being a lot more embodied as a divine being than being a hermit that provides little to the community and doesn't really provide anything to the land.
Precisely. Yeah, the hermit resides on the land, but doesn't necessarily nourish the land. Whereas this is a sort of becoming a part of the process by which the land thrives and by which the garden is created, let's say.
Well,
That's kind of the garden, the space that these children can be in.
it's also a reason why Corrin is a hermit. He's in the sky, doesn't have any land. Roshi on an island doesn't have a lot of land, right? Even Popo, he takes care of like the gardens up there on in upper world on the lookout. But it's not a lot. It's not a lot of land, right? That's not the point. The hermit orientation is not about land, right? And so it makes sense, but it's also like what you were saying, it's Goku's idealization, or let's say biased perception of what a hermit and what a strong fighter would be, when the whole lesson is staring him in the face that it is this cyclical process of acting in the right way that nourishes the land and continues things into the future, and that shouldn't be forsaken, even if the logo spirit is something that can look beyond that. Because Goku's actions of saying we should get even more fish says he's looking beyond it, but that what you were saying about the grandfather insisting that this is enough, that's something that he shouldn't take for granted, and that modesty and humility is going to carry Goku forward as we see him mature in the next few episodes.
Yeah, I want to say Goku saying, "I hope you get more this time," is almost to say, it's about today. It's not about the future. If he gets more and gets more, he overfishes it, and then eventually everybody starves, right? So this is he's wise because he's getting the right amount, right? And
Yeah,
and that's
exactly.
also why, for instance, Roshi, what you were just saying, why Roshi sends the other fighters away in this episode as well, because they need to take part in sort of a microcosmic, or you could even say a macrocosmic iteration of what Goku is coming into contact with here, but he's just doing it on a spiritual level, whereas now they can't just learn from the hermit anymore, right? And it's not just about being a physically strong person. They need to step out of that and then begin to ascend in the same way that Goku is, and that's why Roshi looked them directly in the eye and said, "At this rate, you'll never be able to compete with Goku."
Right, and that's because he is aware of that path that Goku has taken and that he did not take. He could not take, let's say. And Roshi never went and trained with Kami, right? And so it's the limitations of the hermetic and the instantiation that the hermetic is not the holistic, and that it's not the end of wisdom.
Precisely. And of course, that's why we're headed where we are with the end of this series and the end of this arc, right?
Hell yeah. And so we see Kami. No, not Kami. Popo says that Goku doesn't realize a thing, and Kami, I think he says, I disagree. No, that isn't necessarily the case. And Kami looks on, hopefully. And we get this last little tagline here before it turns into the drawing version, and it says, out of his 3 years of training, this was the day that Goku laughed the most. It also, and I like that too, because it brings a point of a microcosm of the heroic journey, right? Goku steps into the unknown with fishing, and it only happens in a few minutes, but it does happen. Like Goku steps into the unknown with fishing. He's open to receive the wisdom of the ages to be able to do it better, and it does so, and he's rewarded, and so he is joyful in that process, right? It's not just that he gets fish. It's that
I
he
think
gets
that's
to participate in this process that is flowing throughout the land, let's say. Go ahead.
well, the laughter is important in a more Eastern sense, right? When you look at the teachings of Buddhism and these adages and these little these stories that you hear about how laughter comes up from within, it's more of a spiritual thing. You can't make yourself laugh, right? It's an expression of something greater that comes through you. And so I think that's kind of what it's saying here, is that Goku laughed the most here because this was representative of him being most open to the thing that was flowing through him and bringing joy.
Sure, and I would also say, considering the next couple episodes, it probably is about right. This is the most light-hearted one, I would say.
Yeah. But it's also a microcosm of the other stuff that we're going to see through this arc. But I think this episode is very concise whenever it finally arrives at the end, saying exactly what it's trying to say. It seems very on the nose. I mean, the names of people being food, like every little piece of this episode is pretty intentional, right? It's funny to me that you can look at an episode like this and say, oh, you can skip it. It's just filler. When in reality, this episode's like this little condensed like nugget of the themes of the arc.
Yeah, and it really like hammers home the whole thing that Popo said in the beginning, that you have to feel as the sky. It's got to be you have to be open to this perceptive process and how others are involved with it. And it goes with what you were saying about the grandfather here, because he feels as the sky, right? He knows that if he takes too much fish or too many fish, then all the forest will suffer, right? He knows how all of his movements and all of his actions interact with everything around him at all times in his domain. And it's come over the course of 60 years. And so Popo saying you have to feel as the sky, and that's what we're getting at, is that almost omniscient view of the domain in which you're inhabiting.
And that ties really well into this point that I think we've said throughout the series a bunch of times, which is that when Roshi introduces martial arts to Goku, it's about moving well, right? It's to move well. And all of this and all of people's misinterpretations of what the martial arts represent in the story is, it's about moving well and what it means to move well, right? And this is an example of being aligned in such a way that he's moving in balance, that he's moving as well as he can, right?
Right, and that's one thing why I wanted to emphasize so much that he's being a good guest in the house, is that he is trying his best to be as properly oriented as possible in the face of the unknown. But yeah, I think that pretty much wraps up the episode, unless you had anything else you wanted to say.
No, I think that pretty much covers the episode. It's a nice light episode that, I mean, realistically is not 100% necessary to understand the story of Dragon Ball, but it's a really good sign pointing to what is going on and what it's about, especially here towards the end.
Oh, definitely. Well, we do have a few chats. I think I'll let you go ahead and read those, Brock, real quick.
Yeah, so Bays had said the training and battles facilitate character growth, often spiritual, and clashing philosophies and motivations. Absolutely. I mean, that's been, and we'll see that actually quite a bit more in the next episode. That there are the characters and the conflicts represent the willing out of ideas. It's a battle of ideas, and it's a show about ideas and people becoming ideas and the way the ideas instantiate themselves.
Which
and
ideas are
become
stronger
real.
than other ideas, right?
Which ones have more staying power, which ones are good, which ideas are bad. And then, yeah, it's to say that this is just a show about people fighting is just so reductive when it's truly a show about ideas. Um, and different philosophies, different approaches to things, different ways to move, right? Which ways of moving are good and which ways of moving are bad, and what does it mean to move well in the world? What does it mean to move well as an individual?
And it all
Yeah,
really
100%.
builds on each other. Like, that's one thing that I think has really been part of the, I don't know actually, but I don't know if this is the case. It may be a theory. Just hear me out. I think that one of the reasons why the fandom has such a hard time grasping some of these things is because it was like learning algebra before learning how to like add. So it builds on each other. Like this whole thing in Roshi's training, it gets built on by Korin, right? That gets built on by Kami. That gets built on by King Kai. But we only see Goku in Z after he already has all this, and we don't have a lot of context on any of that, right? And so it's really can seem a lot more like that because we're arriving in Z to a point where the fighting and the contesting of ideas is actually like the main subject matter of what's happening. And it's not.
I think that's a really good way of putting it. It's almost as if Dragon Ball is teaching you addition and teaching you like it's teaching you multiplication, subtraction, and division, and then you step into Z, and now we're in equations. And you can't do an equation if you don't know how to add or subtract or multiply things together, right?
Right. And then you see them solved, and it's like, oh, spectacle.
And you're like, oh, there's a bunch of cool numbers that fly at the screen.
Oh, God. Kind of in some games, like some of the Dragon Ball games, it is a lot of numbers flying at the screen.
The other chat from Bays that we haven't addressed, he says, one of my personal biggest takeaways from you guys is the representations of the Ki Blasts. So I would like to hear you respond to that because that was one of my first big takeaways from you. You were the one that introduced the idea that the Ki Blasts represented something other than just an expression of power.
Well, it all has to do with the
kind of helped me to understand it.
Yeah, it all goes back to the Kamehameha wave. I thought about for a while, even before I had like a full analysis. I'm like, why do like all these young boys, and why like every young boy I know that was growing up in the 90s and 2000s, like why did we all like say the Kamehameha wave and like do it all the time and like do it to each other, do it to our moms, like all that. And that had been such like a mystery to me that but there was definitely something there. And so really thinking about it and like piecing together the analysis, thinking about the speech and the way that every time Goku uses it in a, let's say, plot altering way, it's always after he's like recited it. Not all of them do that. Like most of the other Ki Blasts don't do anything like that. But it's become famous and synonymous with Goku. And because it is the speech that he's using to represent the power of the logos. And that was one of the things that first I was able to kind of figure out. And then you can then from there you can kind of piece together some of the other Ki Blasts, the other, like, let's say, I don't know, special attacks, whatever, that the Z fighters have. You know, Piccolo special beam cannon. We have some analysis on that already. I think we've talked about that a little bit, but I don't want to get ahead of ourselves.
It's a continuation of something we've already talked about, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I mean, I think it goes a long way in explaining to people that don't know much else about the show that it's more than what you might think. And specifically, you know, some of the early instances of it and some of the instances of it when it fails are very fine examples to prove that point, because it works against things that are like weak to being exposed to the truth. But it doesn't work against Tao, for example.
Doesn't work against Tien.
Doesn't work against Tien, yeah. And there's reasons for that we go into. But yeah, I think I'm glad that we were able to do that. I really white pilled thanks to you, Bays.
That was the point.
Number 1 fan, Bays. Here we go. Huge fan, Bays. Where's Chris Sombra? Number 2 fan. That's what I'm saying. Anyways,
but yeah, that's the magic words video, right? I think that sums it up pretty well, because it's not just Dragon Ball that does that. That's a way that ideas have been expressed through stories for a long time. And not making that connection was one of those slapping myself on the forehead moments when we were doing that analysis. Like, of course, these are magic words, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, it becomes so apparent, and that's why I was like so focused on, the kids doing it in my childhood, because it's like almost reciting magic words. Like they're really like summoning up that spirit, right? I mean, everyone remembers what is it, like Jason the Super Saiyan, the kid that like goes Super Saiyan in that video that was viral when we were younger.
Yeah.
Like there was just something about it, and we'll go into Super Saiyan is a whole nother thing. Like going Super Saiyan, oh man, I can't wait to get into that someday. Well, if we keep on track, we should be going on. But anyways, yeah, I mean, that was why I was focused on that part of it, because the magic words aspect of it was really what it was like the final nail in the coffin for me to like, or let's say the final piece of the puzzle for me to like piece the whole thing together.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree too. There are other anime that try to do something similar base that they're clunky. They're clumsy about trying to express these ideas. They don't do it with the sort of brushstroke that Toriyama did, right?
And I don't
Toriyama seems to have been completely operating with the muse.
Right. And it shows, because like I don't know how well those are representations of what they're even trying to be, and why are magic words associated with that? Like Frieza doesn't have to say death beam when he uses his death beam in the show, like he does in the games. But
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if it's used for like in other anime, and like everyone says their attack moves and it doesn't really mean anything, then that doesn't mean anything, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's the repetition, the instantiation, the insistence, and the usage, the symbology, and how each use fits with the Kamehameha wave that all sells it for me as to be that's actually what it is. And it doesn't really matter whether or not Toriyama intended it to be, because if we just look at the text, that is what happens in the text.
Precisely.
Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Anyways, it has been an honor and a privilege, Baze. Well, stick around, buddy, because just stick around for a second. I think we're going to go ahead and sign off here, and I think that's all. Is there anything else you had to say, Brock?
No. We're probably going to be back soon with another analysis very soon. So I think that we've summed up pretty much everything we can about this episode, and I'm excited to talk about one of the weirdest episodes of the whole series.
It is strange. All right, well, this has been Secret of the Woods, Dragon Ball episode 128. I've been your host on the left, Owl.
I'm your host on the right, Brock.
And we wish you all a good night.